I need to answer the question. Why am I here? Why am I in Missouri? I've got a cattle operation in Kansas, northwest corner of Kansas. Denver's our closest urban center, 180 miles away. Colorado Springs is our second closest urban center, about 200 miles away. And I have a meat company there. So I raise my livestock. I've got cattle and hogs in northwest Kansas, and I sell what I produce in Colorado, in the Colorado Springs and along the Front Range of Colorado. So why do I care about a constitutional amendment in Missouri? And the reason I care is because every day that I get out of bed, the reason I wake up is to increase income at the farm and ranch gate, to benefit farmers and ranchers, family farmers and ranchers, save rural communities, and give people who eat good food. That's why I get out of bed in the morning. It's not to go check on my cattle and sell meat in Colorado Springs. If this constitutional amendment passes in Missouri, you can bet it will be in Kansas, in Colorado, in Iowa, and every other state where there is wealth to be extracted by big corporations. Last night, we were in Kirksville. Abraham Lincoln's name came up when Joe Maxwell was talking about Abraham Lincoln was a railroad attorney. He worked for these robber barons of the day, the robber barons of 120 years ago or more. The railroad trusts, the banking trust, we had the meatpacking trust. Corporate power is nothing new. And so I wanted to pull up Lincoln's letter to William Elkins and read it. Just an excerpt from it. We may congratulate ourselves that this cruel war is nearing its end. It has cost a vast amount of treasure and blood. It has indeed been a trying hour for the Republic. But I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. As a result of the war, corporations have been enthroned, and an era of corruption in high places will follow, and the money power of the country will endeavor to prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people until all wealth is aggregated in a few hands and the Republic is destroyed. I feel at this moment more anxiety for the safety of my country than ever before, even in the midst of a war. Abraham Lincoln. This is about corporate power. Abraham Lincoln was a railroad attorney, but he certainly didn't stand up for the railroads when it came to corporate power after the war and when these robber barons of the 1900 time frame were entrenching their power, including 5 meat packers that controlled around 50% of the market. Today, we have 4 meat packers that control 85% of the market. I went to college at Colorado State University. I got out of there in 1975 with an animal science degree, not to be confused with an animal husbandry degree. I started in the cattle business in 1975 in St. Francis, Kansas. I built my first feedlot in 1978, a 14,000 head feedlot. And by the 80s, by the middle to the late 80s, I got suspicious. What's going on? I started out in this business with 20 meat packers that I could sell to, from Nebraska to Colorado to Missouri to Kansas to Texas. 20 meat packers. In fact, I remember coming to work at that first feedlot in St. Francis, Kansas, and on a Monday morning, I would find a cattle buyer sleeping in his car outside the gate. He wanted the first shot at our cattle that week. By 1988, the 4 meat packers were on the march. They had been cooperating for at least 10 years, not competing. They had been cooperating to concentrate the market and to bring more power and profit to themselves. In fact, Bob Peterson, the president, CEO of IBP, came to a Kansas cattle meeting the Kansas Livestock Association annual meeting in Kansas and asked for our help. He said, if ConAgra and Cargill keep feeding their own cattle, giving them an advantage over IBP, we're going to have to do something. And he asked for our help to eliminate captive supplies. They were all making money, except for IBP was disadvantaged because the other packers had their own cattle. We ignored that request. And of course, IBP came back a couple years later, and they announced that they had done something, that they had now developed the formula whereby they were able to control cattle for themselves outside of the cash market, which greatly affected the cash market available to people like me. And so we got to thinking about all the impact of concentration and consolidation, the fact they had their own animals and didn't really have to bid into the cash market as much as they used to. And I decided, I think I've been playing in a fool's game. I'm a cattle feeder. I take the risk. I buy calves. I buy feeder cattle. I hope to sell them to a meat packer in a competitive market, and that wasn't happening. But it wasn't just me that was losing money. It was the customers that I fed cattle for, that I had convinced to put cattle in my feedlot, and I'd led them right into the fool's game. And I'd been leading the way. I have to redeem myself some way. This is just wrong that we were playing in this fool's game and that people lost ranches. I knew the rancher in Meeker, Colorado that hung himself with a calving chain in the calving barn that spring. I know these people that were losing their ranches, their longtime family ranches in Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, Montana, and the Dakotas. I knew these people. They were friends of mine. And I had it figured out. It was a fool's game. And I started speaking out against the meatpacking monopoly, the robber baron of our day. What an interesting time to live in, but what an awful time to live in when you lose your markets. And as the Joplin Globe, the person in the farmer that was quoted in the Joplin Globe says, well, you know, I used to have the right to save my seed. I used to have the right to raise a hog and sell it for a fair, competitive market price. What happened to those rights? And so the Amendment 1 is really about market power. These big corporations have amassed all the market power they can possibly amass. In fact, they are now global corporations. And as Wes talked about, in all of the three major meat categories, poultry, pork, and beef, all of those big companies are now foreign companies. From JBS out of Brazil in beef and poultry to Shineway, a Chinese company controlling Smithfield or owning Smithfield in this country. America today is a net food importer on a value basis. And we want to give more power to the corporations so that they can extract, they can pillage, they can plunder, they can take our way of life away from us. We can't even farm our own land and have access to a market so we can survive on that land. Concentration of power and wealth has never been greater in human history. Do you realize that the Walton family members, the Walmart family members, control more wealth today than the bottom 40% of Americans? And they want more. They want more. Power wants more power. And this amendment in the state of Missouri is all about giving them constitutional rights to get more power without the resistance of more knowledgeable consumers. Consumers today that have read Fast Food Nation, Omnivore's Dilemma, Power Steer by Michael Pollan. They watched Food Inc. They watched Dr. Eichert in the movie Fresh. These consumers are becoming much more knowledgeable, and they're asking where their food comes from. They want to know how it's produced. But what if we could get a constitutional amendment in Missouri that would deny them from knowing any of that? The country of origin labeling bills could be out the window. You wouldn't have to tell a consumer where that beef came from or where that poultry came from or where that pork came from. They would be in the dark and they would have absolutely no choice. All of the work that we've done to create a better, healthier environment for family farmers to grow good food for consumers would be greatly disadvantaged. The corporations of the world would have the advantage over family farmers. And all of this local food system we've worked so hard to build, like the one I've got, like the one in St. Francis, Kansas, that's connected to those eaters in Colorado Springs. 16 years ago, folks like Richard Oswald, myself, and others formed an organization called the Organization for Competitive Markets. We were bent on fixing the marketplace. But as we've progressed, we've never won. We really focused on litigation. And we won every single court case. The jury awarded us in every single case damages, including the Tyson IBP case, $1.28 billion to the cattlemen in that case for what IBP Tyson had done to us in manipulating the markets. The jury apologized to the plaintiffs in that case, saying, we're so sorry, you deserved more, but we didn't have a mathematical formula to be able to justify it. $1.28 billion. We didn't care in the least about that money. We wanted to fix the market. We wanted the injunctive relief that we would get through that court ruling, through that jury award. The judge reversed the jury verdict, took that away from the cattlemen, and additionally made us pay Tyson's court costs of $80,000. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. The John Roberts, Alito, Thomas Supreme Court said they would consider the cattlemen's case for fair markets. But there were two cases before them. The Anna Nicole Schmidt case for the Family Feud case and the cattlemen's case for fair markets. Which one do you suppose they chose to hear? You know the answer. It wasn't the cattlemen's case. It was the Anna Nicole Smith's Family Feud case. They gave the green light to the big meat packers to plunder even more, to extract even more money from this marketplace without any enforcement of the Packers and Stockyards Act. Bad precedents. And we're going to go so far, the brazenness of these big corporations, to go so far as to put it in the Constitution of a state is why I am here. This simply cannot happen. This is a fight for freedom. This is a fight for our own freedom to exist in our communities, to have access to clean, healthy, and safe food. OCM decided, okay, litigation hasn't worked all that well, and we continue to work on legislative issues. Country of origin labeling, mandatory price reporting, other things that would advantage a farmer, give him his markets back, let consumers know where their food comes from. We've never won. We finally got country of origin labeling, but now they've said, oh, it's only on retail beef. And oh, the ground beef, we can label that multi-country of origin. So the consumers get very tired. Oh, who cares? Let's just not eat as much hamburger. So we lose demand, we lose consumption. And so the other thing we're working on in the Organization for Competitive Markets is to try to create more competitors. How do you have competition without competitors? And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot to shine the light of unfairness on a price that a farmer might be receiving, and can change that situation with that knowledge and with that exposure of the unfairness and injustice. And this is what we've been working on. But this amendment in Missouri, granting corporations preference over family farmers, is going to really hurt all of those efforts to try to build a safer, better food system for America. So I say vote no on this amendment. Thank you.